We are entering the third part of this chapter, bahagian ketiga bab ini iaitu growth curves, lengkung pertumbuhan. 16.3.1 memerihalkan jenis tumbuhan berdasarkan kita hidup. So we are going to see a few examples of plants, categories of plants based on their how long they live. Plants can be classified based on their life cycle, which are tumbuhan dapat dikelaskan berdasarkan jangka hayatnya, how long they can live. So when we classify them on how long they can live, so there are three categories. Ada tiga kategori. Yang pertama dipanggil sebagai annual plants. Ya, dalam bahasa Melayu tumbuhan semusim, annual plants. They only live for one season or 1 year. Then we have biennial plants, tumbuhan dwi musim. So they live for 2 seasons or 2 years, then they die. And last we have something called perennial plants ataupun tumbuhan saka, which lives for many years. Okay, so three categories of plants: annual plants, biennial plants and perennial plants. Tumbuhan semusim, tumbuhan dwi musim dan tumbuhan saka. So let's learn each of them and how their growth curve looks like. Baik, kita mula dengan annual plants dulu. Tumbuhan semusim. Apa makna dia? Are plants that have only one life cycle for a season or a year. Tumbuhan yang mempunyai satu kita hidup sahaja untuk semusim atau untuk setahun. So they only have one life cycle. Life cycle means starting from germinating, they grow bigger, produce flower, produce fruit. That is one life cycle. So their life cycle is only for one season or they can live for only 1 year. After that, they die. So very short term they live. Usually die after completing their biological cycle, which starts from germination and ends with flowering or producing seed, like what I was telling you just now. So biasanya akan mati selepas melengkapkan kitaran biologinya, bermula daripada percambahan sehingga diakhiri dengan berbunga atau penghasilan biji benih. So that is one life cycle lah. They will germinate, they grow bigger, then at the end of the life cycle they produce flower. So after they produce flower, they produce fruit. Inside the fruit got seed. Then they die off. Later the fruit will fall down and the seed will germinate and the process continue. After that one season or 1 year, they will die, taken over by the seed later. For example, pokok padi, paddy plant, pumpkin, and pokok tembikai, watermelon plant. So there are annual plants which live only for one season, only for 1 year, then they die off. Simple, I think. Let's go to biennial. Okay, before that, the growth curve we see later. By now, let's see apa maksud biennial plants ataupun tumbuhan dwi musim. What is the meaning? Refer to plants which takes 2 years with 2 seasons of growth to complete their life cycle. Merujuk kepada tumbuhan yang mengambil masa 2 tahun, iaitu dengan 2 musim pertumbuhan untuk melengkapkan kita hidupnya. So they live for 2 years. They live for 2 years with 2 seasons of growth. 2 tahun iaitu dengan 2 musim pertumbuhan. So what are the 2 musim punya pertumbuhan? What are they? Let's see. The first growth season is the vegetative growth, which is the growth of roots, leaves, and stem structures, whereas the second growth season is reproduction. So musim pertumbuhan pertama ialah pertumbuhan tampang, iaitu pertumbuhan struktur akar daun dan batang, manakala musim pertumbuhan kedua ialah pembiakan. So the first growth season, which is usually the first year, it is called the vegetative growth atau pertumbuhan tampang. What grows? Root, leaf, and stem. Root, leaf, and stem only during the first year of growth. Then after that, bila masuk ke tahun kedua, which is the second growth season, the second year, the second growth season is for reproduction. So they start producing flower, musim pembiakan, menghasilkan bunga, lepas tu buah, lepas buah mengeluarkan biji benih. So lepas mereka mengeluarkan biji benih, then they die off. Okay. Most grow in temperate regions. Kebanyakan tumbuhan di musim tumbuh di kawasan beriklim sederhana. Temperate regions means negara yang ada 4 musim. So most of the biennial plants grow in countries experiencing 4 seasons, 4 musim. After going through vegetative growth, these plants briefly stop the growth process during winter. So setelah mengalami pertumbuhan tampang where root, leaves and stems grow, proses pertumbuhan akan berhenti seketika pada musim sejuk. So by the time the root, the leaves, the stems grow, akar, daun, batang dah tumbuh, sampailah pula musim sejuk, winter season. So because during winter season, musim sejuk, the temperature is not suitable, there is not enough sunlight, So what they do, they stop their growth. To stop until they produce the root, leaf and stem only, then they stop growing due to the cold weather, due to the winter. So they stop growing at that time. Lepas winter habis, dah masuk tahun kedua, then what happens? During spring and summer, which is the second year already, the growth continues as preparation for reproducing by flowering. Apabila memasuki musim bunga dan musim panas, iaitu dah masuk tahun kedua, pertumbuhan kedua diteruskan sebagai persediaan untuk membiak. So after winter, winter around November, December, dan betul masuk tahun kedua dan New Year. So bila masuk tahun kedua, after winter, masuk tahun kedua, spring and summer, May. So what happened now during spring and summer? There is more sunlight, there is enough water, temperature also suitable. Then now they will continue their growth. But this time, they continue the growth, producing flower, seed, and fruit for reproduction. So we have to wait until next year for them to produce the fruit. Takes a very long time. They produce fruits and seeds and eventually the plants will die. So tumbuhan akan berbunga, menghasilkan buah serta biji benih, akhirnya mati after they produce the seed. So example, we have cabbage, carrot, silver cockscomb, kobis, lobak merah dan pokok bunga balung ayam. So example of biennial plants. Perennial plants ataupun tumbuhan sakar. Refer to the plants which live more than 2 years. Merujuk kepada tumbuhan yang hidup lebih daripada 2 tahun. And some we have learning, they're living for 3,000-4,000 years. Ini. Have longer lifespan depending on the species and condition. Mempunyai jangka hayat yang panjang, of course lah, bergantung kepada spesies dan keadaan pokok itu. Different species, they have different number of years, how long they can live, Next. Can be classified into 2 categories. Ada 2 kategori tumbuhan sakar ataupun apa kita panggil perennial plant. Woody perennial plants, tumbuhan berkayu sakar, dan herbaceous perennial plants, tumbuhan herba sakar. So we have perennial plants which are woody plants, berkayu, dan perennial plants which are herbaceous plants, very small plants, right? Most of these plants are able to flower and bear fruit many times throughout their life. Kebanyakan tumbuhan sakar mampu berbunga dan berbuah berkali-kali, like just now lah, pokok-pokok yang menghasilkan buah, rambutan, durian. So because very long term punya living, life, I mean a very long lifespan. So every year they produce flower, every year they produce seed. Okay. These plants have structures that are adaptable to their surroundings and temperature change. Tumbuhan ini mempunyai struktur yang dapat beradaptasi dengan persekitaran dan perubahan suhu. I mean, they have some characteristics that enable them to adjust themselves to the surroundings and temperature. For example, so bila mai musim luro, autumn, due to hot season, so what they do in order to save themselves, they will shed their leaves. So when they shed their leaves, the rate of transpiration becomes lower, so not much water they will lose. So they can still conserve the water. So this is an example of the adaptation that they have. All right. Example, grass, hibiscus plant and mango plant. Rumput, pokok bunga raya dan pokok mangga. Move on to the next page. Let's see the growth curves. 16.3.2 mencerakinkan lengkung pertumbuhan tumbuhan semusim, tumbuhan di musim dan tumbuhan saka. So now we are going to see the growth curves for the annual plants, biennial plants and perennial plants as well. So this is very important for your essay as well. So kena fokus sikit bahagian ni. Now let's see. Growth curve of annual plants dulu. Lengkung tumbuhan semusim dulu. Cuba kita lihat ini dulu. And this is the lengkung. This is the graph for annual plant. Markah pertama, the growth curve is a sigmoid curve. Lengkung pertumbuhan berbentuk sigmoid. Same like with humans that we learned in chapter 15 form 4. The growth curve of humans are also known as sigmoid curve. The same thing for annual plant. The growth curve is a sigmoid curve. You write this first, you get first mark for your essay. Okay. Stage A. So kita bahagikan graf ini kepada 4 peringkat. The first one is stage A. This is the stage A, this one. From here to here. So my question here, why does, if you see here, we are talking about growth. So kalau talking about growth, sepatutnya the dry mass must increase because growing what? Dry mass must increase. Tapi di sini peliknya after germination, bukan after, during germination, what happens here? The growth shows negative growth rate. The growth rate is negative. The dry mass decrease. Macam mana during germination yang menyebabkan dry mass dia menurun? Patutnya bertambah lah kan. So why at the first part of the growth it shows negative? This is negative growth. We call this negative growth. This is positive growth. This is zero growth. This is negative growth again. So why at the early stage there is negative growth here? Let's see. Jawapan pertama, decreasing dry mass. So how do you know from the graph bahawa it shows negative growth? Yaitu dry mass dia menurun. Ada penurunan dalam dry mass. So bila dry mass dia menurun, this shows negative growth. So kenapa dry mass dia berkurang? Why the disim kering dia menurun? Shows negative growth because food stored in the cotyledon is used for germination before the leaf emerge to carry out photosynthesis. Makanan yang disimpan dalam cotyledon digunakan untuk pertambahan sebelum tumbuhnya daun untuk menjalankan fotosintesis. Because during germination, I think I already mentioned to you last time, during germination, leaves are not formed yet. Daun belum terbentuk lagi. So because the leaves are not formed yet, daun tidak terbentuk lagi, dan tak boleh berfotosintesis. Cannot carry out photosynthesis. So if they cannot carry out photosynthesis, that means they cannot produce food. They cannot produce food means they cannot grow as well. So where to get the food. So now during germination, before the real leaves emerge, they get their nutrients from the cotyledon. They get the nutrients from the cotyledon. So during germination, what happened? They take the nutrients from the cotyledon, burn it to produce energy. They carry out cellular respiration by using the nutrients stored in the cotyledon, because cotyledon is the food reserve. Food are stored there. Makanan disimpan di situ. So when they grow, during germination, when they grow, they use the nutrients from the cotyledon to generate energy and so on. So because they use the nutrients from the cotyledon, the mass of the cotyledon will decrease. Jisim cotyledon akan berkurangan. That's why bahagian pertama graf ini, bahagian awal graf ini menunjukkan negative growth due to this reason. And of course, after the plant, after leaf all come out, they can photosynthesis, and then this cotyledon is not required anymore. So later part, the cotyledon will dry and fall down. Okay. Stage B. This is stage B. So stage B shows positive growth. The dry mass increase. So why does the dry mass increase? Increasing dry mass, peningkatan jisim kering. So what causes their dry mass to increase? Showing positive growth. The rate of growth increases rapidly. So the kadar pertumbuhan meningkat dengan cepat. They grow very fast. This is because the plant has carried out photosynthesis. Tumbuhan telah menjalankan fotosintesis. So because now leaves dah keluar, daun dah keluar, leaves emerge. Now the leaves can photosynthesize. So because the leaves are able to do photosynthesis, they can produce food, and with the food they produce, they can produce more tissues. Produce more tissues means their dry mass will increase. Let's move on. Now let's see C. What is happening at C and what is happening at D? C shows zero growth. Dia lebih kurang constant. D shows negative growth. And the graph stops here. Why the graph stops there? Because the plant died already. Pokok tu sudah mati, so no more growth. Yes or no? Okay, let's see C and D. Stage C, constant dry mass. Jisim kering yang malar. The dry mass is constant. The rate of growth is zero. Kadar pertumbuhan sifar. That means there is no more growth. Plant is matured at this stage. Tumbuhan dah jadi matang pada peringkat ini. So stage C shows zero growth. So why zero growth? That means there is no, the growth rate is zero. They don't grow anymore. So why they don't grow anymore? Because they have become mature. Sudah matang. So the dry mass becomes constant. Stage D, peringkat D, decreasing dry mass. Dry mass dia menurun, as you can see here. This is the stage D, dry mass dia menurun. Kenapa dry mass dia menurun? Because happens slowly because of aging. So berlaku secara perlahan-lahan sebab pokok tu dah semakin tua. Lower rate of photosynthesis, the rate of photosynthesis menurun. Shedding of leaves, flowers and seed dispersal. So berlaku secara perlahan-lahan disebabkan oleh penuaan, kadar photosynthesis menjadi rendah, berlaku keguguran daun dan bunga. Of course, when the flower and seed, when the flower buah jatuh, their dry mass will decrease dan penyebaran biji benih. So they produce fruit. Later the fruit will fall down. When the fruit fall down from the plant, of course, the dry mass of the plant will decrease because daun-daun kering jatuh, buah jatuh, bunga jatuh, seed jatuh. So their mass will decrease. Next, let's move on to Growth curve of biennial plants, lengkung pertumbuhan tumbuhan dwi-musim, which lives for 2 seasons. So this is the first growth season. This is the first growth. And this is the second growth season, musim pertumbuhan kedua, di mana kita belajar tadi. First growth season, they produce their roots, leaves and stems only. Where it comes at the end, yang ini sudah musim sejuk di sini, so their growth rate will decrease. After that, the following year, summer and spring, they will grow again. This time, they grow for reproduction purposes. So the growth curve has two sigmoid curves which are combined. Berbentuk dua lengkung sigmoid yang digabungkan bersama. So mana dua lengkung tu? This is the first sigmoid curve and the another sigmoid curve joined together. So they have two sigmoid curve, dua lengkung sigmoid. First growth season, musim pertumbuhan pertama, which is this. This is the first growth season. Plant produce leaf, photosynthesis takes place. Tumbuhan menghasilkan daun, berlakunya photosynthesis. So bila berlaku photosynthesis, with the food they produce, they will produce more tissues. So their leaves grow, their stems grow, their roots grow, right? Food stored in tubers. Makanan disimpan di dalam umbisi. Contoh umbisi ialah ubi kentang. So bila ada excess food, foods which are not used for growth, excess, the food will be stored in the tuber ataupun umbisi, where the food later will be used during the second year of growth. So they have to store their food. So bila masuk second growth season, which is this is the second growth season. What happens here? The food stored in the tuber just now, umbisi tadi, is used to produce flowers and seed. Makanan yang disimpanan digunakan untuk menghasilkan bunga dan biji benih. So bila masuk tahun kedua, the excess food that is stored in the tuber or umbisi just now the food will be used to produce flower and seed. Then after they produce the flower, they produce the fruit, they produce the seed, later they will die. So the fruit seeds will jatuh and then a new plant grows from there. So this is the biennial plants punya growth rate, growth curve. Let's go to the last one, the third one. Oh, we're going to finish already. Growth curve of perennial plants ataupun lengkung pertumbuhan tumbuhan saka. So let's see the growth curve of perennial plants which lives for many years. The growth is a series of small sigmoid curve. Jujukan sigmoid yang kecil. Mana dia? This is one sigmoid curve. Another sigmoid curve. Another sigmoid. Another sigmoid. Another sigmoid. And so on until I don't know how many years. Okay, so a series of small sigmoid curve, jujukan sigmoid yang kecil on top of each other, continuous, alright? Every year, the growth curve is a sigmoid curve. So lengkung pertumbuhan pada setiap tahun berbentuk sigmoid. Growth occurs throughout the lifespan. Growth occurs throughout the lifespan of the plant. Pertumbuhan berlaku sepanjang hayat. So they keep on growing and growing and growing and growing. That means they show unlimited growth. Kalau annual plant, tumbuhan semusim, limited growth, only for 1 year, 1 season. Kalau biennial also limited growth for 2 years only. Kalau tapi untuk perennial plant, tumbuhan saka, the growth occurs continuously. Unlimited. Itu maksud dia. The rate of growth is high during spring and summer. Kadar pertumbuhan tinggi pada musim bunga dan musim panas. Why? Because high light intensity increases the rate of photosynthesis. Keamatan cahaya yang tinggi meningkatkan kadar fotosintesis. So during spring and summer, the growth rate is very high, kadar pertumbuhan sangat tinggi, because during spring and summer there is enough sunlight, temperature is very suitable. So because of that, they can photosynthesize, producing food more and more, so causing them to grow faster. The rate of growth decreases in winter. Kadar pertumbuhan menurun pada musim sejuk. That is shown by this, the part of the graph that shows why here got negative growth. Why here got negative growth? Also negative growth here. Also negative growth here. Also negative growth here. Because of the winter time. So due to not much sunlight, temperature not very sesuai, tak sesuai. So their growth rate becomes, their growth rate decrease, or their growth rate becomes zero. Then that's why this part show negative growth. Other examples, bila main autumn season, musim musim kering, semua daun dia gugur. Bila daun dia gugur juga menyebabkan kepada negative growth. Apart from that, each year they produce fruit. So when the fruits fall down, showing negative growth. So that is the meaning of negative growth at the end of each of the sigmoid curve. Negative growth, pertumbuhan negatif. There's a reduce in the dry mass. Right. And the last page. This is the last page, right? So auxanometer. Auxanometer is a device used to measure the growth of plants. So after measuring the growth of plants using this meter, they will draw the graph. So they will get graphs like this. They will get graphs like this, depending on what kind of plant is that. So this meter is used to measure the growth rate, maybe for few weeks or maybe for few years. So chapter 1 dah habis, clear.